Hello everyone and welcome back to Destiny. Today I wanted to take just a few minutes and talk a little bit about the Crucible. Now, as we know, in the Rise of Iron expansion coming out September 20th, we can expect a lot of new things in the Crucible, like new game modes, new maps, and the most curious of all, new features. Now, of course, Bungie has yet to mention what these new features are, and they plan to do so in a summer reveal stream. But that hasn't stopped the curious community to jump immediately to the possibility of us getting custom or private matches. And today I'm here to tell you about some of my ideas of how they can implement these features into the game. Now, custom and private matches are curiously still missing from Destiny, despite it being a pretty standard feature in most shooters. And I think the reason that we don't have it already is most likely because it might be a bit more of a challenge to develop than it is for other games like Call of Duty or Halo. The advantage those games have is that the PvP is completely separate from the single player. This means that those developers can generally create completely unique PvP experiences without having to worry about how it affects the rest of the game. Now, of course, with Destiny, things are quite a bit different. In fact, Bungie has gone through great lengths to make sure that your PvE experience is exactly the same as your PvP experience. So what about Destiny is holding back custom and private matches? Now, before we get into it, I do want to address the two different terms that are used throughout the community, which is private matches and custom games. Now, while the two terms are used pretty interchangeably in most other first-person shooters, they don't actually mean the same thing. Private matches enable custom games, and that's going to be important to keep in mind for this video. So first, let's take a look at private matches. What are private matches? Private matches are essentially your ability to turn off matchmaking and only include your friends and people that you invite. You're basically saying that I want to play this activity with my friends and no one else. So for example, Destiny's raids right now are technically private matches since you can't have matchmaking. And that sort of leads me to the big reason why I think we don't have private matches yet, and that is because I think they want to implement it into the entire game, not just the Crucible. As you know, one of the biggest requests from the community is the ability to have matchmaking for raids. So I think Bungie has taken a look at this piece of feedback along with all other feedback about matchmaking and private matches and are developing an entirely new interface for the director to enable private matches at will. So what would this new interface look like, and would it have to be an entirely new redesign? Well, I think it could be something as simple as a little toggle switch next to the launch button that would turn on or off matchmaking. Theoretically, that could also mean that you can go into matchmaking for a story mission, or to queue in solo for a strike. Having that level of freedom could definitely be a huge improvement to the quality of life in Destiny. Now, of course, Bungie could keep this pretty user-friendly by selecting defaults for each activity. Maybe you have to make sure to turn on matchmaking if you want to go for stories or raids, and make sure to turn off matchmaking if you want to queue in solo for a strike. And then of course, there's the Crucible. And like with any other activity that they wish to, they can restrict whether or not we have the ability to turn off matchmaking. A good example for this restriction would be the Trials of Osiris, where it would be pretty silly to have the ability to turn on private matches, since you would just help each other get to the lighthouse. So invariably, some activities would still have a restriction on your ability to go private. And on the flip side, if Bungie has still decided to not have raid matchmaking, they could restrict that to private only, but the idea is that they would have that feature implemented if they change their mind. So let's move on to custom games. So what are custom games? With a custom game, you're essentially saying that you want to jump into a Crucible match, but you want to change up some of the rules. Maybe you want heavy ammo to spawn more often. Maybe you want to have 4 different teams. Maybe you want to exclude all exotics. So how would custom games be implemented into the director? Well, for that, I think it would be a part of a redesigned Crucible system that also includes ranked playlists. For my idea, once you select Crucible from the director, you'll land on what I call the quick play screen. It would essentially be the Crucible screen we know now with all of the current playlists, and some of the featured playlists above it. This would essentially be the casual way of playing the Crucible, and it would resemble the Crucible as it is today. There would be no ranks, and it would rely on location-based matchmaking. Now, from the Quick Play menu, you could go left to go to ranked playlists, or right to go to custom games. If you choose ranked matches, you would have the same playlists as you do in Quick Play, except in this case you would have a ranking system and it would rely on skill-based matchmaking. Ranked play is going to be a great way for hardcore players to really test their skills, and Bungie could make it a really fun activity by adding exclusive shaders or emblems to achieve. Now, the only thing that would change is I think that they should move Trials of Osiris over to the ranked side of things. It would still behave the same way it does now, except it would just live over in the ranked page simply to emphasize its competitive nature, and if it were incorporated into the ranking system, that would pave the road for Trials of Osiris leaderboards, which could be really awesome for the community. And also another benefit of Trials of Osiris being in the ranked screen would mean that it doesn't necessarily have to happen every weekend. The current issue I have right now with Trials of Osiris is that it doesn't really feel very special simply because we get it every weekend. And the interesting thing is, when the Iron Banner returns every month, we're all looking forward to it and it's celebrated in the community. So imagine if Trials of Osiris was only once a month. Now, of course, that change wouldn't go over well right now, simply because Trials of Osiris is really the only hardcore competitive game mode we have in the game. But once we have ranked play, we wouldn't have the need for Trials of Osiris every weekend. So even if it's not in Rise of Iron, I really hope that ranked playlists find their way into Destiny sooner rather than later. Now moving on to the page to the right of Quick Play, which is Custom Games. Once you land on this page, you will have a certain amount of nodes open for you to go in and customize different kinds of games. In this example, I'm showing you 12 open slots just for example, and you would essentially hover over one of these nodes, hit the triangle button to inspect it, and that's where you would customize your game. Then eventually you would have a button at the bottom which would grant you access to the community of custom games. Here you could share your own or download those that you like. Then of course, in true Bungie fashion, they would select their favorite every week and feature it on the Quick Play screen in the place of where Trials of Osiris is. Now, I could go on for a lot longer about all of the little ideas that I have for all of these different features, but I think you guys get the gist of what I'm talking about. So in summary, I think all of these ideas would be a great way to implement private matches and custom games inside of Destiny. What do you think of my ideas? Leave them in the comments below. Drop a like if you can, and subscribe for more Destiny content. And I will see you all next time. It is week 42, the Iron Banner has returned, and that guy just disappeared. Let's jump in.